August 6, 1945. Deep in the bowels of Tokyo, beneath the Imperial Palace grounds, where the air hangs thick with the scent of damp concrete and cigarette smoke. The hum of ventilation fans struggles against the oppressive heat of summer, even underground, as fluorescent lights flicker overhead, casting long shadows across maps pinned to the walls like wounds on a battlefield. Here in the fortified war room of the Imperial Japanese Army's General Staff Headquarters, General Korochika Anami, Minister of War, paces with the deliberate stride of a man who has stared death in the face too many times to flinch. His uniform, starched and impeccable despite the rationed fabric, clings to his frame, and the clink of his medals echoes softly against the low ceiling. You can almost feel the weight of the earth above, pressing down like the expectations of an empire that refuses to yield. Anami stops before a massive table cluttered with reconnaissance photos, supply charts, and telegrams yellowed from hasty transmissions. His aides, young officers with hollow eyes from sleepless nights, stand at attention, their boots scuffed from endless drills. The homeland defense, Anami mutters, his voice gravelly from years of command, must be absolute. Every citizen a soldier, every inch of soil a grave for the invaders. He points to a map of Kyushu, where red pins mark projected American landing zones, Operation Olympic they call it in whispers, gleaned from intercepted signals. The room buzzes with low conversations, logisticians arguing over fuel reserves, intelligence officers decoding the latest scraps from magic intercepts, those cursed American codebreakers who seem to read Japan's thoughts before they're even formed. Admiral Toyoda, Chief of the Naval General Staff, sits across the table, his naval whites a stark contrast to the Army's khaki. At 60, Toyoda's face is etched with lines from the sea, from battles like Leyte Gulf, where his fleets were gutted by American carrier strikes. He sips from a tin cup of weak tea, his eyes scanning a report on submarine patrols in the Pacific. The kamikaze units are ready, he says, his tone measured, almost mechanical. Our divine wind will sweep them from the seas. But there's a flicker in his gaze, a momentary hesitation that only his closest aide notices, a doubt born from months of watching Japan's once mighty combined fleet reduced to rusting hulks in harbors, fuel-starved and outgunned. Toyoda remembers the pre-war briefings, the optimistic projections. America's isolationist spirit would crumble after Pearl Harbor, their industries too slow to mobilize. Yet here they are, 4 years on, with Yankee bombers darkening the skies over Tokyo night after night. The room is a microcosm of Japan's war machine, a blend of ancient Bushido and modern desperation. Colonel Masahiko Takeshita, Anami's brother-in-law and a fierce loyalist, leans over a wireless set, adjusting dials with calloused fingers. The crackle of static fills the air, interspersed with fragments of reports from the front. Manchuria holds against the Soviets. For now. Okinawa's fall was a Pyrrhic victory for the enemy, costing them dearly in blood. But the truth lingers unspoken, like the dust settling on forgotten teacups. Supplies dwindle, aircraft production lags behind losses, the people's morale frays under firebombing raids that turn cities to ash. LeMay's B-29s, those silver behemoths, have become nightmares incarnate, dropping incendiaries that devour wooden homes like ravenous beasts. Anami slams his fist on the table, startling a junior officer who spills ink across a deployment roster. We fight on. The Emperor's will is our shield. Spirit over steel. The Gaijin underestimate our resolve. His words echo the propaganda blared from radios above ground, where civilians drill with bamboo spears, women and children practicing to charge tanks with explosives strapped to their backs. Ketsu-go, the decisive battle plan, envisions millions dying to bleed the invaders dry, forcing a negotiated peace. Anami believes it. He has to. As a veteran of the Russo-Japanese War, he's seen miracles before. Port Arthur, Tsushima. Why not again? Toyoda nods, but his mind drifts to the intelligence briefs he's buried in his desk. Declassified years later, those documents reveal the cracks. American shipyards churning out carriers at a rate Japan could never match. Dozens launched while Japan's yards scraped for steel. In one intercepted report from neutral sources, The US Navy boasts over 100 carriers by mid-1945, against Japan's handful of survivors. Toyoda had dismissed it as bluff, but the losses at Philippine Sea, the Marianas Turkey shoot, gnaw at him. "Admiral," an aide interrupts, handing him a fresh decode from Saipan listening posts. "Enemy activity over Tinian, B-29s taking off but no formation patterns, perhaps reconnaissance." The Admiral waves it off. "Monitor it. The Americans play games, but our interceptors will handle stragglers." Little do they know, as the clock ticks toward 8:15 a.m. Hiroshima time, 2:15 a.m. in Tokyo, but the war room operates on eternal vigilance, that a single B-29, the Enola Gay, piloted by Colonel Paul Tibbets, cruises at 31,000 feet, its bomb bay cradling Little Boy, a uranium device born from the Manhattan Project's secrecy. The project, costing nearly $2 billion, more than Japan's entire 1944 military budget of around $1.5 billion in equivalent terms, funneled into factories, labs, and mines across America, represents the unseen fist Japan has ignored. Above ground, Tokyo stirs under a humid dawn. Streetcars rumble, vendors hawk rationed rice, air raid wardens scan the skies. In the palace, Emperor Hirohito, the divine sovereign, awakens to his morning rituals, unaware that the day will shatter his realm's illusions. Back underground, Anami confers with General Yoshijiro Umezu, chief of the Army General Staff, their voices rising in debate over troop reallocations from China. "The Kwantung Army is our bulwark against the Bolsheviks," Umezu insists, his mustache twitching. "Pull them back and Manchuria falls." Anami agrees, but his thoughts turn to his family, to the code of honor that binds him. Diaries later uncovered show his inner turmoil, a man torn between duty and the dawning horror of total annihilation. The tension builds like a storm front. A telegraph operator bursts in, face pale, clutching a slip. "Urgent from Hiroshima Command. Enemy aircraft sighted. Single plane, high altitude." Murmurs ripple through the room. Anami straightens. "Alert the fighters. It's a probe, nothing more." But as minutes stretch, the wireless falls eerily silent. No all clear, no engagement reports. Toyoda feels a chill, unrelated to the fans' whir. He's seen too many silences precede disaster. Midway, Guadalcanal. In this moment, frozen in the underground haze, Japan's leaders cling to their belief system. That willpower can defy logistics, that the Yamato spirit trumps American steel. They've denied the intelligence for years. Reports of US factories producing 7,000 planes a month by 1944, while Japan struggles for 1,500. Shipyards launching a carrier every few weeks, eclipsing Japan's output tenfold. Declassified US interrogations post-war would capture Toyoda's admission. "We underestimated their industrial might. It was beyond comprehension." But here, in the vigil, denial reigns. The first tremors of truth approach, carried on radio waves from a devastated city. As the sun climbs higher over Tokyo, the Empire's commanders continue their plans, oblivious to the atomic age dawning 350 miles southwest. The illusion holds for now. Sweat beads on foreheads, cigarettes burn down to stubs, and the war room pulses with the false rhythm of invincibility. Little do they suspect that by day's end, a decoded transmission will crack the facade, forcing them to confront the unthinkable. America has held back, and the end is not in glory but in fire. August 6, 1945. High above the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, where the stars fade into the first blush of dawn, the whine of 4 Wright Cyclone engines cuts through the thin air at 31,000 feet. Inside the pressurized cabin of the B-29 superfortress named Enola Gay, after Colonel Paul Tibbets' mother, the crew moves with the precision of men who know they're etching history, even if the full weight of it hasn't yet sunk in. Tibbets, 30 years old with a pilot's steely gaze honed over hundreds of combat hours, grips the yoke lightly, his flight suit crisp under the dim cockpit lights. The altimeter needle holds steady, the compass pointing inexorably toward Japan, some 1,500 miles from their takeoff point on Tinian Island in the Marianas. You can hear the rhythmic thrum of the props, feel the subtle vibrations through the aluminum frame. as if the plane itself pulses with anticipation. Navigator Captain Theodore Dutch Van Kirk plots their course on a chart lit by a gooseneck lamp, his pencil scratching adjustments for wind drift. "ETA to IP in 2 hours, Colonel," he calls out, voice steady over the intercom. "The initial point where they'll begin the bomb run over Hiroshima." In the bomb bay, secured like a precious artifact, rests Little Boy, a 9,700-pound uranium-235 gun-type fission device, its sleek 10-foot-long casing painted olive drab. Armourer Captain William Deke Parsons, a Navy ordnance expert seconded to the 509th Composite Group, has already armed the bomb in flight, a precaution against takeoff accidents, inserting the cordite charges with hands that betray no tremor, though his mind races with the physics of it all. Criticality, chain reaction, a blast equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT. The crew, a mix of veterans and specialists handpicked for Project Silverplate, shares smokes and black coffee from thermoses, their banter masking the undercurrent of tension. Bombardier Major Thomas Ferraby peers through his Norden bomb sight in practice runs, calibrating for the Aioi Bridge target, a T-shaped landmark in Hiroshima's delta. "Clear skies forecasted," he mutters, recalling the weather recon from Straight Flush, another B-29 that scouted ahead. No fighter opposition expected. Japan's air defenses are stretched thin, radars spotty from constant raids. But the stakes are cosmic. Tibbets addresses the crew via intercom. "This is no ordinary mission. What we drop today could end the war." He doesn't elaborate. Security blankets the Manhattan Project, a $2 billion behemoth involving 130,000 people across Oak Ridge, Hanford, and Los Alamos, dwarfing Japan's war economy. Back on Tinian, hours earlier, the runway had glowed under floodlights as the Enola Gay taxied, her nose art gleaming, a curvaceous pin-up, ironic against the death she carries. General Curtis LeMay, the firebombing architect, had given the go-ahead from Guam, his cigar-chomping persona belying the calculated devastation of Operation Meeting House, which incinerated Tokyo in March. But this is different. Atomic, a word whispered in briefings. Physicist Dr. Norman Ramsey, part of the delivery team, had overseen loading, his glasses fogging in the tropical humidity. "It'll work," he'd assured Tibbets, echoing Oppenheimer's Trinity test success just 3 weeks prior in New Mexico's desert, where the gadget's flash lit the night like a second sun. As the Enola Gay crosses the Japanese coastline, dawn breaks over the Seto Inland Sea, painting the water in hues of gold and crimson. Below, unaware, Hiroshima awakens, a port city of 350,000, army depots mingled with wooden homes, schools and factories churning out war materiel. Air raid sirens have wailed intermittently, but with only a few planes spotted, weather scouts, most ignore the all-clear. At Hiroshima Castle, headquarters of the 2nd General Army, Field Marshal Shunroku Hata reviews defenses, his staff oblivious to the lone bomber approaching. Civilians queue for rations. Children head to school, streetcars clang along tracks. The city, spared major firebombing to preserve it as a target, buzzes with wartime normalcy. Inside the plane, tension mounts. Co-pilot Captain Robert Lewis logs in his diary, "My God, what have we done?" Words he'll scribble post-drop, but the sentiment simmers now. Tail Gunner Staff Sergeant George Bob Caron adjusts his camera, tasked with photographing the event. At 7:09 a.m. local time, the Enola Gay reaches the IP. Tibbets banks into the run, Ferraby taking control. "Bomb bay doors open," he announces. The tone arm sounds, steady beep as crosshairs align. At 8:15 a.m., 17 seconds past, Little Boy releases, parachutes deploying to slow its fall, allowing the plane to escape the blast radius. Tibbets executes a sharp 155-degree turn, diving to gain speed. 43 seconds later, at 1,900 feet above the Shima Surgical Clinic, the bomb detonates. A blinding flash, brighter than 1,000 suns, erupts, gamma rays, neutrons, heat wave expanding at light speed. The shockwave follows, a thunderous roar flattening buildings in a 1-mile radius, igniting fires that will consume 70% of the city. Temperatures at ground zero hit 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit, vaporizing people into shadows on walls. Over 70,000 die instantly, tens of thousands more from injuries and radiation. Reconnaissance pilot Captain Robert A. Lewis, from a trailing plane, radios back. Results clear-cut, successful in all respects. But in Hiroshima, chaos reigns. Survivors stumble through rubble, skin peeling from thermal burns, the wounded crying out amid the dust-choked air. A mushroom cloud boils skyward, 60,000 feet high, visible for miles. Japanese anti-aircraft crews, stunned, report to Tokyo. A single plane, immense explosion. Yet the full scope eludes them. Communications severed, lines down, radios silent. Aboard the Enola Gay, heading home, the crew watches the cloud recede. Tibbets lights a cigar, relief washing over him. Mission accomplished, he signals to Tinian. Unbeknownst to them, this act shatters not just a city, but Japan's denial. Intelligence later declassified shows U.S. production might. By 1945, America produced 96,000 aircraft annually against Japan's 8,000. As the plane drones on, the Pacific below serene, the leaders in Tokyo's bunker await reports, the silence from Hiroshima growing ominous. The decoded transmission, intercepted American signals boasting of the strike, will soon arrive. But for now, the atomic dawn heralds the end of illusions. The empire, built on spirit and sword, faces a force beyond reckoning, science wielded as apocalypse. August 6, 1945. In the dimly lit corridors of the Imperial General Headquarters bunker, buried under layers of reinforced concrete and the weight of a nation's fate, the clock on the wall ticks past 9 a.m. with mechanical indifference. The air, recycled and stale, carries the faint tang of ozone from overworked radios and the acrid bite of chain-smoked cigarettes. General Anami, his broad shoulders hunched over a cluster of communication logs, rubs his temples as if to ward off an impending headache. At 52, with a face hardened by campaigns in China and the intrigues of Tokyo politics, he exudes the unyielding resolve of a samurai, but today there's a subtle crease in his brow, a harbinger of cracks in the armor. You can almost taste the anxiety thickening the atmosphere, like the humidity seeping through unseen vents, as officers mill about with clipped efficiency. Telephones jangle sporadically, operators scribbling notes with frantic haste, while the whir of teletype machines spits out ribbons of paper that coil like serpents on the floor. Anami turns to Colonel Takeshita, his trusted aide and kin, whose uniform bears the faint stains of spilled miso from a hurried breakfast. "Status from Chugoku District?" Anami demands, his voice a low rumble that commands silence. Takeshita consults a notepad, his pen hovering. Initial sighting at 809, single B-29, high altitude. Air defense engaged, but no confirmed hits. Then, nothing. Lines to Hiroshima are down. Secondary stations in Okayama report a flash, like lightning, but no storm. The room falls quieter, the usual din of strategy sessions muted by the void from the southwest. Admiral Toyoda, seated at his station with a map of the inland sea unfurled before him, taps a pencil against his teeth. He's no stranger to bad news. His navy has bled out in the Philippines. Carriers sunk by Halsey's Third Fleet in numbers that defy pre-war estimates. But this silence unnerves him. "Dispatch reconnaissance," he orders an ensign, who salutes and scurries to the aviation liaison. From nearby Matsue Air Base, a Mitsubishi Ki-46 Dyna scout plane is scrambled, its twin engines roaring to life on the tarmac as pilot Lieutenant Hiroshi Tanaka climbs into the cockpit. Tanaka, 28, with sharp eyes trained for spotting enemy fleets, adjusts his goggles and oxygen mask, the leather creaking under his grip. "Hiroshima Vector," the tower instructs. As he lifts off, the plane banks over rice paddies shimmering in the morning sun, oblivious farmers below pausing to watch. Back in the bunker, the weight stretches like taut wire. General Umezu pores over Kwantung Army dispositions in Manchuria, his fingers tracing borders threatened by Soviet buildup. Intelligence from neutral diplomats hints at Stalin's impatience, but the non-aggression pact holds, or so they believe. "The Reds won't move," Umezu assures Anami, though his tone lacks conviction. Diaries from this period, declassified decades later, reveal Umezu's private fears. Soviet tanks massing, outnumbering Japan's depleted forces 10-1. But focus remains on the Americans, whose island hopping has brought them to Okinawa's doorstep, 300 miles from Kyushu. A junior officer bursts in, breathless, clutching a preliminary report from a coastal observer. Flash observed at EO 8:15, direction Hiroshima. Tremendous light followed by rumble like earthquake. Smoke pillar rising. Murmurs erupt. Earthquake. Sabotage. Anami silences them with a glare. Get confirmation. Alert the Emperor's staff. In the Imperial Palace above, Hirohito convenes with aides in the library, surrounded by ancient scrolls and the scent of polished wood. The 44-year-old emperor, bespectacled and scholarly, sips green tea, discussing agricultural reports amid air raid drills. His divine status shields him from raw details, but whispers of unusual enemy action filter through. Toyoda rises, pacing to the intelligence desk where magic decodes stack up. Intercepted U.S. signals, cracked by American cryptographers, but occasionally snagged by Japanese listeners. One fresh decode catches his eye, a routine weather report from Tinian, but appended notes from earlier intercepts hint at special mission. He recalls dismissed rumors from Swiss channels, American super bomb projects dismissed as propaganda. Japan's own efforts, the NIGO and FGO programs, have yielded little. Cyclotrons smashed by B-29s, scientists like Nishina laboring with scant resources. Manhattan's scale, Oak Ridge's vast uranium enrichment plants, employing 82,000, dwarfs it, but ignorance breeds confidence. By 10:30 a.m., fragmentary reports trickle in via roundabout routes. Telegraph from Kure Naval Base, 20 miles from Hiroshima, describes a blinding explosion, city engulfed in fire. Anami's face hardens. Mobilize relief units, assume conventional raid, heavy payload. But doubt creeps. Recon pilot Tanaka, approaching Hiroshima at 15,000 feet, squints through binoculars. Below, where the Otta River Delta should sprawl with factories and barracks, a hellscape unfolds. A flattened expanse, fires raging in concentric circles, black smoke billowing like a funeral pyre. "My God," Tanaka radios, voice cracking. "City gone, vaporized. Mushroom cloud dispersing, but devastation total. No structures standing in center." His observer snaps photos, the shutter clicking amid the engine's drone, capturing shadows of the dead etched on bridges. The transmission reaches Tokyo by 11:15 a.m., garbled but dire. In the war room, the operator relays it aloud, the words hanging like smoke. Toyoda freezes, his mind flashing to production figures buried in reports. U.S. shipyards at Kaiser and Newport News launching Essex-class carriers monthly, 24 by 1945, each with 90 planes, while Japan's last, the Shinano, sank on trials. "One plane did this?" he whispers, the implication dawning. Not just bombs, but a new weapon rewriting warfare. Anami slams the table. Impossible. Must be multiple aircraft, unobserved. But the recon confirms. Single drop, apocalyptic result. As noon approaches, more details emerge. Survivors staggering into outskirts, blistered and dazed, speaking of sun falling to earth. Medical teams from nearby bases report symptoms unknown, nausea, hair loss, radiation's insidious mark, though unnamed then. In the bunker, psychologists note the shift. Officers' eyes dart, voices lower. The psychological collapse begins subtly. A lieutenant drops his clipboard, hands trembling. Toyoda confides to an aide, words later recorded in testimonies. "Their industry. We've seen glimpses, but this? They held back, building in secret while we bled." Anami retreats to a side chamber, lighting incense at a small shrine to ancestors. His diary entries from this day, preserved in archives, reveal turmoil. The enemy's might exceeds our estimates. Spirit alone may not suffice, yet publicly he rallies. This changes nothing. Ketsugo proceeds, bleed them on the beaches, but the seed of doubt plants deep. Intercepted U.S. broadcasts begin filtering in, Truman's announcement at 4 p.m. Tokyo time, 3 a.m. Washington, but delayed relay. Atomic bomb harnessed the basic power of the universe. The decoded transmission arrives by early afternoon via San Francisco shortwave, translated hastily. Hiroshima struck by atomic power, equivalent to 20,000 tons TNT. Japan must surrender or face rain of ruin. The room reels. Toyoda's admission slips out in a meeting. Their carrier output alone, hundreds, while we scrap for one. We've fought shadows. Figures crystallize. US 1944 production. 88,000 planes, 2.1 million tons shipping. Japan, 28,000 planes, 800,000 tons. Manhattan's $2 billion versus Japan's $15 billion total war budget stretched thin. The illusion shatters. America never fully engaged, toying while amassing doom. Yet denial clings. Anami, steeling himself, prepares for the Supreme War Council. "We fight on," he declares, but his voice wavers. Outside, Tokyo swelters, civilians unaware of the pivot. The day unfolds, truth inexorable as the rising smoke over Hiroshima. August 6, 1945. The sun hangs mercilessly above the Sato Inland Sea, its glare reflecting off the water in shards of light that stab through the cockpit canopy of the Mitsubishi Ki-46 Dyna reconnaissance plane. Lieutenant Hiroshi Tanaka, 28, grips the control column with white-knuckled hands, his flight suit soaked through with sweat despite the altitude chill at 18,000 feet. The twin He-112 engines drone a steady, almost mournful note as he circles the devastation below. The plane banking gently to give his observer, Warrant Officer Kenji Sato, a clear view through the belly camera. The air smells of hot oil and fear, the cabin cramped with film canisters, and the faint metallic tang of oxygen from their masks. You can feel the heat rising even from this height, a thermal updraft that rocks the lightweight airframe like a leaf in a furnace. Sato's shutter clicks in rapid succession, each frame capturing a city erased. Where Hiroshima as 7 river branches once threaded through a grid of wooden homes, factories and barracks, now lies a smouldering, cratered plain. The Aioi Bridge, the intended bullseye, stands bent but intact, its T-shape a cruel marker amid the ruin. "Center is gone," Sato mutters into the intercom, his voice hollow. "No buildings, just fire and dust. Shadows on the streets, like people burned into the ground." Tanaka glances down, bile rising in his throat. He's flown over Tokyo after LeMay's March raids, seen the blackened scars, but this is different. One plane, one bomb, a silence deeper than any battlefield. Below, the mushroom cloud has dissipated into a bruised purple haze, but secondary fires rage unchecked, feeding on splintered timber and paper walls. Winds whip the inferno into firestorms, temperatures still exceeding 1,000 degrees in pockets. Survivors, those beyond the 1.6-kilometer blast radius, stagger like ghosts along the riverbanks, clothes incinerated, skin hanging in strips from thermal flash. A streetcar caught mid-route near Kamiyacho sits fused to its tracks, passengers reduced to charred silhouettes. Tanaka's altimeter reads steady, but his stomach lurches. He radios Tokyo, voice cracking over static. "Hiroshima obliterated. Single detonation. Repeat, single. No raid formation. City center vaporized. Estimating 80% destruction. Over." The operator in the bunker acknowledges, but the words echo back distorted, as if the ether itself recoils. Tanaka pushes the throttle, diving for closer photos despite flak risk. None comes. Hiroshima's anti-aircraft batteries are slag. Sato reloads film, hands trembling. "The river," he says. "Bodies floating. Thousands, like leaves." The Ota River, once a lifeline, now carries the dead downstream, bloated and burned. At Honkawa Elementary School, 400 meters from Hypo Center, the concrete shell stands, but inside, 300 students and teachers are ash shadows on stairs they never descended. Tanaka remembers his own daughter, safe in Kyoto, or so he prays. He banks north, spotting military targets. The 2nd General Army HQ at Hiroshima Castle, its wooden keep collapsed. The Ujina port depots, ammunition exploding in chain reactions. The Chugoku Regional Army's command structure, gone in an instant. As the diner turns for home, a second recon plane joins from Iwakuni, Captain Izo Nomura in a Ki-51 Sonia, diverted from patrol. Nomura, a veteran of China bombing runs, circles lower at 8,000 feet, close enough to smell the smoke through vents. His gunner photographs the hypocenter, a 300-meter-wide crater, soil fused to glass. Radiation, Nomura wonders aloud, unaware of the term but noting his dosimeter's erratic twitch, early Geiger counters crude yet ticking. He transmits, firestorm expanding, survivors exhibiting strange burns, skin sloughing, vomiting blood, request medical evacuation. Tokyo relays to field hospitals in Kure and Okayama, but trains are derailed, roads blocked by debris. Back in the air, Tanaka's fuel gauge dips. He levels off, heading northeast, the horror receding but burned into memory. Sato develops notes in his log. Blast radius 2 km, total destruction, 5 km heavy damage, temperature at center, estimated 5,000 degc, no conventional bomb capable. He recalls pre-war lectures on explosives, TNT, picric acid, but this defies physics. Japan's top scientists briefed on German U-235 efforts had dismissed fission as decades away. Nishina's team at Riken struggled with a single cyclotron. America built cities for it. The planes land at Matsue by 2:30 p.m. Film rushed to darkrooms. Photos emerge wet and stark. The Aioi Bridge, the crater, the shadows. Couriers motorcycle them to Tokyo, arriving by dusk. In the bunker, Anami and Toyoda will see them soon, proof that spirit cannot shield against atoms. Tanaka, debriefed later, will testify, "I saw the end of war as we knew it. One bomb, one city, they have more." His words, recorded in 1946 interrogations, echo the collapse. As the sun dips, Hiroshima burns into night, the glow visible 100 miles away. Survivors crawl to aid stations, whispering of Picadon, flashboom. Doctors, untrained in radiation sickness, apply mercurochrome to melting flesh. The death toll climbs, 70,000 instant, 70,000 more by year's end. And in the skies, the reconnaissance pilots carry the truth home. America's restraint was mercy, the bomb, a warning. The diner's engines wind down on the tarmac, propellers still. Tanaka removes his helmet, hair matted, eyes hollow. He lights a cigarette with shaking hands, staring west where the sky still glows. The illusion of control shattered at 31,000 feet. August 6, 1945. The bunker beneath the Ichigaya Heights, 3:47 p.m. Fluorescent tubes buzz like trapped hornets, throwing harsh light across the faces of men who have not seen daylight in 48 hours. The air is a stew of sweat, ink, and the sharp bite of developing chemicals from the darkroom down the hall. A courier, boots caked with Hiroshima's ash-gray dust, carried on the wind, shoulders through the steel door, and drops a manila envelope onto the map table. It lands with a slap that silences every conversation. The label reads in red grease pencil, "Recon Film, Hiroshima, urgent." You can feel the temperature drop 10 degrees as General Anami tears the flap. Inside, 8 glossy 8x10 prints, still damp, the chemicals stink, rising like a warning. He lays them out in a grim mosaic. The first shows the Aioi Bridge from 15,000 feet, its T-shape intact, but the city around it erased as if a giant eraser scraped the earth clean. The second, the hypocenter, a perfect circle of fused glass glinting in the sun. The third, shadows, human shadows, etched onto granite steps where people had been standing when the light came. Anami's finger hovers over one shadow, a mother and child fused into a single silhouette. His hand does not shake, but the cigarette between his lips burns forgotten, ash dropping onto the photo like grey snow. Admiral Toyoda leans in, monocle glinting. He has seen Pearl Harbor's wreckage, Leighty's oil-slicked seas, but nothing prepares him for this. One aircraft, he says, the words tasting foreign, Enola Gay, 16 AUG 45 Iro 8160L local, V675 to Tinian control, target primary visual bomb away, results exceed expectation, city obscured by smoke to 40,000 F-tier returning base. Below it, in Yamada's hurried kanji, Yuanzibao Dan, atomic bomb, underlined 3 times. The room exhales as one. Colonel Takashita, Anami's brother-in-law, snatches the sheet. "Propaganda," he snaps, but his eyes betray him, darting to the photos. General Yoshijiro Umezu, chief of the Army General Staff, stands motionless, mustache twitching. He has spent the morning moving red pins on the Kyushu map, planning Ketsugo, the million-casualty defense. Now the pins seem childish. He reaches for the production annex, a dog-eared folder marked Top Secret, U.S. Industrial Estimates, July 1945. It was dismissed as alarmist 3 weeks ago. He flips it open. Page 7. Aircraft, 7,131 units, month, all types. Escort carriers, 1 every 11 days, Ingalls Kaiser. Liberty ships, 3 per day, average 18 shipyards. 4-engine bombers, 650 month. Page 12. Handwritten marginalia by a naval attaché in Switzerland. Manhattan Engineer District, budget equivalent Y cartoon 4 billion, personnel 130,000, purpose unknown. Toyoda's voice cuts through the rustle of paper. We built 1,131 aircraft in all of 1944. He does not need to say the rest. The room knows Japan's steel allocation for the entire year would not plate a single Iowa-class battleship. The Admiral's fingers drum the table, then stop. He remembers the briefing in 1941. America's industry would take 2 years to wake. They were wrong by 4 years and an apocalypse. A new teletype clatters. The operator rips the strip and reads aloud, translating on the fly. POTUS Truman Address, 6 Ogi 450300 Zulu. 16 hours ago, an American airplane dropped 1 bomb on Hiroshima. It is an atomic bomb. It is a harnessing of the basic power of the universe. We are prepared to obliterate every productive enterprise the Japanese have. If they do not now accept our terms, they may expect a rain of ruin from the air, the like of which has never been seen on this earth. The paper flutters from the operator's hand. Rain of ruin. The phrase lands like a second detonation. Anami finally speaks, voice low, almost conversational. How many do they have? The question hangs. No one answers. Intelligence has no count, only the knowledge that Los Alamos never stopped, that Hanford's reactors glow day and night, that Oak Ridge's calutrons spin uranium like silk. Japan's Nigo project produced less than a gram of enriched material before B-29 smashed the lab in April. The asymmetry is obscene. Toyoda opens a locked drawer and pulls out a single sheet, his own contingency memo dated 10th of July. It reads, in his neat hand, "If U.S. demonstrates fission weapon, recommend immediate approach to USSR for mediation." He had buried it. Now he slides it across the table to Anami. Their eyes meet, old friends, old rivals. Anami's jaw works, but no sound comes. At 4:12 p.m., the door opens again. A palace liaison, Captain Makoto Matsuda, bows low. His Majesty requests the Supreme Council at 5:00 p.m. The Lord Privy Seal asks for a preliminary assessment. Matsuda's eyes flick to the photos, widen, then drop to the floor. Anami straightens. "Tell Marquis Kido we will attend." He turns to the room. "Gentlemen, prepare your figures. Every ton of steel, every liter of aviation fuel, every aircraft in the homeland. We face the Emperor with truth tonight." His voice is iron, but the photos tremble slightly in his grip. As officers scatter to their stations, Toyoda lingers. He lifts one print, the shadow of the mother and child, and slips it into his breast pocket over his heart. Outside the bunker, Tokyo's afternoon sun slants through shattered skylights above ground, unaware that below the Empire's illusions are burning faster than Hiroshima. August 6, 1945, 5:03 p.m. The goblet room of the Imperial Palace, a low wooden chamber cooled by paper screens, and the faint scent of tatami warmed by summer heat. 6 men sit in a semicircle on silk cushions, knees folded, backs rigid, the only sound the soft tick of a French ormolu clock gifted by Napoleon III. Emperor Hirohito enters without ceremony, his naval uniform dark against the pale walls, spectacles catching the lantern light. He takes the central seat, a slight nod the signal to begin. No one bows too low. Protocol bends under the weight of the day. You can sense the air itself holding its breath, thick with camphor from mothballed dress coats and the sharper edge of fear. Prime Minister Kantaro Suzuki, 78, liver-spotted hands clasped, opens a leather folder. His voice is papery but steady. Your Majesty, at 08:15 this morning, Hiroshima ceased to exist. 1 aircraft, 1 bomb. Casualties, incalculable. He slides the reconnaissance prints across the lacquered table. They fan out like tarot cards of doom. Foreign Minister Shigenori Togo, civilian suit rumpled from hours in the bunker, leans forward. Mr. President Truman's broadcast confirms the weapon is atomic. He threatens a reign of ruin. Neutral channels, Sweden, Switzerland, report the Americans have more ready. Togo's English is clipped, learned in London decades ago. He translates Truman's exact words, each syllable a hammer blow. General Anami sits opposite, the mother-child shadow photo now a square bulge beneath his tunic. He has not removed it since the war room. The Army's position remains unchanged, he says, the sentence rehearsed 100 times on the drive over. Ketsu-go will inflict 1 million American casualties on Kaikyu-shu. The people are prepared. He gestures to a slim dossier, 28,000 kamikaze aircraft, 5,000 Shinyo suicide boats, 2.3 million regular troops, 24 million civilian militia armed with bamboo spears. The numbers sound formidable until you remember the enemy's monthly output of 8,000 planes. Admiral Toyoda clears his throat. The Navy concurs on defense of the homeland, but he pauses, the pause of a man stepping off a cliff. Our surface fleet is 11 destroyers and 2 light cruisers. Fuel reserves 41 days at emergency sortie against their third fleet, 106 carriers, 24 battleships, 1,200 aircraft embarked. He does not need to add that Halsey's task force alone outguns the entire combined fleet of 1941. Navy Minister Mitsumasa Yonai, silent until now, speaks softly. We have been fighting the war we wished for, not the war that is. His eyes, red-rimmed, flick to the Emperor. Hirohito's face remains impassive, but his fingers tighten on the armrest. Lord Privy Seal Marquis Koichi Kido, the Emperor's closest advisor, places a single sheet before Hirohito. It is a draft imperial rescript, surrender. The ink is still wet. If we continue, Kido says, Kyushu falls by November, Honshu by spring. The imperial line ends in fire. He does not say the word atomic again. It is unnecessary. Anami's hand moves to his sword hilt, an unconscious gesture. To surrender is to dishonor 3,000 years of... Suzuki cuts him off with a raised palm. General, 3,000 years end today if we mistake pride for strategy. The room temperature seems to drop another degree. Hirohito speaks for the first time, voice calm, almost curious. How many such bombs do they possess? Silence. No one knows. Intelligence estimates range from 3 to 30. The uncertainty is the point. Toyoda breaks it. Enough. He pulls a folded cable from his sleeve, intercepted via the Japanese embassy in Moscow, decoded that afternoon. Stalin has denounced the neutrality pact. Soviet declarations of war expected within hours. The Kwantung Army faces 2 million red troops and 3,000 tanks. We lose Manchuria, Korea, Sakhalin in days. Anami's knuckles whiten. The double blow, atomic fire from the sky, red hordes from the north, tilts the room. Togo adds, the Soviet mediation we hoped for is now impossible. They join the enemy. The clock strikes 5:30. Outside, cicadas scream in the palace gardens. Inside, the council fractures. Anami insists on one condition, retention of the kokutai, the national polity, the emperor's divine status. Suzuki and Togo exchange glances. Washington's demand is unconditional surrender, but perhaps a thread can be salvaged. Hirohito rises. Every man drops to his knees. I will consider all counsel, he says. Reconvene at midnight. He exits as quietly as he entered, the screens whispering shut behind him. Anami remains kneeling long after the others leave. In the lantern glow, the shadow photo presses against his heart like a brand. August 9th, 1945, 12:47 a.m. The bunker's ventilation fans cough against the humidity, pushing cigarette haze in lazy spirals toward the ceiling. The map table is a battlefield of coffee rings and crumpled telegrams. A new red arrow, thick as a blood vessel, slashes across Manchuria from the Soviet border to Harbin. The ink is still wet, drawn by a trembling hand. Colonel Takeshita pins it in place with a bayonet, the steel scraping wood like a scream. You can smell the fear now, sharp as gun oil. General Anami stands over the Kwantung Army status board, his shadow long and jagged under the lamps. The board lists 700,000 men, 1 to 200 aircraft, 1 to 800 tanks. Numbers that looked respectable at sunset now read like a suicide note. A fresh teletype ribbon unspools from the machine. The operator's voice flat as he reads, 9AUG0001, Moscow radio. The Soviet Union, faithful to its duty, declares war on Japan effective immediately. The paper keeps coming. Vladivostok, First Far Eastern Front, 2,500,000 troops, 5,500 tanks, 3,900 aircraft cross-border at multiple points. Objective, Mukden, Changchun, Port Arthur. Anami's fist closes on the sheet, crumpling it. They waited, he says, almost to himself, waited until we bled white, then struck. The Kwantung Army, once the pride of the empire, 1.5 million strong in 1941, has been gutted for homeland defense. What remains are second-line divisions, boys and old men, 300 rounds per rifle, 50 shells per gun. Soviet T-34s roll at 35 mph across the steppe. Japanese anti-tank mines are rationed to 1 per kilometer. Admiral Toyoda enters, coat unbuttoned, face grey. He carries a single photograph. Nagasaki, 11:02 a.m. yesterday, August 8th, Tokyo time. Fat man, plutonium implosion, 21 kilotons. The Urakami Valley erased, 40,000 dead in the blink of an eye. The print is grainy, taken by a U.S. Navy PBY Catalina flying low over the smoke. Toyoda lays it beside the Hiroshima mosaic. 2 cities, he says. 2 bombs. 3 days. The math is merciless. A signals officer bursts in, headset askew. Kwantung HQ reports contact lost with 1st Area Army. Soviet paratroops at Changchun airfield. T-34 columns 40 kilometer inside border, moving unopposed. The room erupts in shouted orders. Telephones slam. Aides scramble for reserve maps. Korea, Sakhalin, the Kurils. Every line is a disaster. Anami turns to the production ledger, open to a page marked in red. Aviation gasoline, 8,200 kiloliters remaining. 12 days combat. 100 octane. 1,100 kiloliters. None. Steel ingots, 14,000 tons. Enough for 3 destroyers or 40 fighters. Across the Pacific, American shipyards launch 3 destroyers before breakfast. The gap is no longer a gap. It is a canyon. At 1:15 a.m., the Emperor's liaison arrives again, Captain Matsuda, eyes bloodshot. His Majesty requires the Council at 2 a.m. Bring all data. Matsuda's voice cracks on the last word. He has seen the palace corridors lined with sandbags, the imperial family's luggage stacked in the foyer. Toyoda pulls Anami aside, voice low. The Soviets take Mukden by noon, Korea by the 12th. We lose the mainland entirely, no mediation, no bargaining chip, only the homeland left to burn. Anami's reply is a whisper, then we burn it honorably. But the word honor sounds hollow like a cracked bell. A final teletype clatters. Nagasaki survivor report, via Kure Naval Hospital. Sky flashed white, mushroom cloud again. Patients from Hiroshima showing same symptoms. Hair falls, gums bleed, death in hours. Radiation. The word is spoken for the first time in the bunker by a young medical officer who has read German journals smuggled through Lisbon. No one laughs it off now. Anami looks at the clock. 1:37 a.m. In 23 minutes, he will face the Emperor with 2 cities in ashes, an empire bisected by red tanks, and an enemy who drops suns from the sky. He reaches inside his tunic, fingers brushing the shadow photo. The mother and child. He does not remove it. Outside, Tokyo sleeps under a false calm. Air raid sirens remain silent. The B-29s are not needed tonight. The war has moved indoors, into fluorescent-lit rooms where men measure the end in kilotons and kilometers. Anami straightens his uniform, adjusts his sword. Gentlemen, he says, voice steady for the first time in hours. To the palace. August 9th, 1945, 2 a.m. The palace library, its walls lined with scrolls older than the nation, now lit only by 2 paper lanterns and the green glow of a single desk lamp. The air is heavy with the scent of old vellum and the sharper tang of fear sweat. 6 men kneel on the tatami in a loose circle, their shadows writhing across the ceiling like smoke. Emperor Hirohito sits on a low dais, legs crossed beneath his naval trousers, a plain wooden stool at his side. No throne tonight, no protocol. Just the weight of 2,600 years pressing down on one man's shoulders. You can hear the silence itself, thick and absolute, broken only by the soft rustle of Suzuki's folder and the distant thud of a generator somewhere in the compound. The reconnaissance prints from Hiroshima and Nagasaki lie between them like autopsy photos. A third sheet, fresh from the signals room, bears the Soviet advance. Mukden fallen, Changchun burning, the Kwantung Army's headquarters a smoking ruin. The red arrows on the map now reach the Yalu River. Prime Minister Suzuki speaks first, voice a dry whisper. Your Majesty, the Supreme Council is deadlocked. The army insists on 4 conditions: preservation of the Kokutai, self-disarmament, trial of war criminals by Japan, no occupation beyond the home islands. He does not say the obvious. Washington will accept none. Foreign Minister Togo adds, the Americans repeat unconditional surrender. The Soviets offer no mediation, only conquest. He places Truman's latest cable on the table, decoded an hour ago. Further atomic attacks will continue until Japan capitulates. Next target Kokura Arsenal, August 11th. Anami kneels rigid, sword across his knees. The shadow photo is now in his hand, creased from hours against his heart. One decisive battle, he says, the phrase a mantra. Kyushu. We trade one island for peace with honor. His voice cracks on the last word. Toyoda, seated beside him, speaks without looking up. We have no fleet to contest the invasion, no air force to cover it, no fuel to move the troops. The decisive battle is a fantasy. He opens his ledger to the final page. Remaining combat aircraft. 2,800, 1,100 operational. Kamikaze pilots, 4,200 trained. Aviation fuel. 6 days. Atomic bombs in enemy inventory. Unknown, minimum 3, maximum unlimited. Hirohito's eyes move slowly across the faces. He has not spoken in 10 minutes. When he does, the room stills as if the world stops rotating. General Anami, he says, voice soft, almost gentle, tell me of the people. Anami blinks. The people are resolute, Your Majesty. They will fight with bamboo spears if... No. The Emperor cuts him off, a rarity that freezes every man. Tell me of the children in Hiroshima, the mothers, the shadows on the stone. Anami opens his mouth, closes it. The photo trembles in his grip. He has no answer. Suzuki slides forward on his knees. Sire, the cabinet has drafted an imperial rescript. It ends the war. It preserves the imperial house. He places the single sheet before Hirohito. The ink is still wet. Having reviewed the state of the empire, we have resolved to pave the way for a grand peace for all generations to come, by enduring the unendurable, and suffering what is unsufferable. Hirohito reads it twice. His fingers trace the characters. Then he looks up. And if the army refuses? Anami's head snaps up. The army serves the throne, but surrender is treason to the dead, to the ancestors, to... His voice breaks. Tears unbidden streak his cheeks. The Minister of War, the architect of Ketsugo, weeps openly. Toyoda reaches into his coat and produces a second document, his resignation, pre-written. If the war continues, the Navy will cease to exist by September. I will not order men to die for a lie. The clock strikes 2:30. Outside, a distant air raid siren wails. False alarm, but it slices the tension like a blade. Hirohito rises. Every man drops to the floor. I will speak, he says, at noon, on the radio, to the nation. Anami looks up, horrified. Your Majesty's voice has never... It will be heard once, Hirohito interrupts, and it will end this. He turns to leave. At the door, he pauses. General Anami, The shadows on the stone, are they not also our people? Anami cannot answer. The Emperor exits, the screens whispering shut. The room remains frozen for a full minute. Then Anami stands, slow and deliberate. He draws his sword, not in threat, but in ritual. The blade catches the lantern light. "I will do my duty," he says, voice hollow. Whatever it may be. He bows to the empty dais, sheathes the sword and walks out into the corridor. The others watch him go, knowing what comes next. At 3:12 a.m. in a small side chamber, Anami kneels before a portrait of his ancestors. He writes 3 haiku on rice paper, folds them into his sleeve and draws his tanto. The blade is cold. His final words, recorded by his aide who waits outside the door. "With my death I hope to atone for the failure to protect the nation." The cut is clean. The Empire's last illusion dies with him. August 14th, 1945, 11:30 p.m. A narrow room deep inside the palace, its walls padded with silk quilts to muffle the world. 2 NHK engineers in rolled shirt sleeves hunch over a Presto 6N lathe, its diamond stylus hovering above a blank acetate disc. The air is close, smelling of hot wax, solder, and the faint camphor of mothballed uniforms. A single red bulb glows above the microphone like a warning eye. Emperor Hirohito stands before it, naval cap in hand, the script trembling slightly between his fingers. He has never spoken into a microphone. The engineers have never recorded a god. You can feel the hush pressing in, heavier than any bombardment. Outside, Tokyo is blacked out, but searchlights sweep the sky anyway. Habit, not hope. In the corridor, Marquis Kido waits with a pistol in his coat, ready to stop any coup. Inside, only 4 men, the Emperor, the 2 engineers, and a palace chamberlain who will carry the finished disc in a lacquered box. Hirohito clears his throat. The stylus drops. The disc spins at 78 RPM. "To our good and loyal subjects." His voice is high, formal, the classical court Japanese of scrolls and edicts. The engineers strain to hear. The microphone is primitive, the room too dead. One adjusts the gain with a trembling hand. After pondering deeply the general trends of the world and the actual conditions obtaining in our empire today, we have decided to effect a settlement of the present situation by resorting to an extraordinary measure. He pauses. The stylus scratches silence into wax. In that pause, the weight of Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Manchuria, and Anami's blood pools on the tatami of memory. Baisdun, we have ordered our government to communicate to the governments of the United States, Great Britain, China, and the Soviet Union that our empire accepts the provisions of their joint declaration. The word surrender is never spoken. Instead, jusho, acceptance of the Potsdam terms. The engineers exchange glances. They understand. The chamberlain's eyes glisten. The enemy has begun to employ a new and most cruel bomb, the power of which to do damage is indeed incalculable. Should we continue to fight, it would not only result in an ultimate collapse and obliteration of the Japanese nation, but also it would lead to the total extinction of human civilization. His voice cracks on Jinrui Bunmei, human civilization. He steadies, finishes the 6-minute address, ends with a plea for the people to endure the unendurable. The stylus lifts. The disc stops. 1 copy is cut. A second is made in case of sabotage. The engineers bow so low their foreheads touch the floor. Hirohito places the script on the table, bows to the microphone as if it were an altar, and leaves without a word. At 11:58 p.m., the lacquered box is sealed. A courier on a motorcycle races through blacked-out streets to NHK headquarters. Guards with fixed bayonets line the route. At 12:03 a.m., the disc is locked in a vault. Broadcast is scheduled for noon tomorrow, August 15th. In the palace, Hirohito returns to his study. He opens a drawer, removes Anami's 3 haiku, reads them by lamplight. Cherry blossoms fall. Steel cannot hold back the wind. I follow them down. He folds the paper, places it in a cedar box with Anami's blood-stained tunic fragment, and closes the lid. Outside, a junior officer runs through the corridors shouting that rebel troops from the 1st Imperial Guards Division are approaching the palace plaza. Kido draws his pistol. The night is not over. August 15th, 1945, 11:55 a.m. The NHK broadcast studio, a squat concrete box on the edge of Ueno Park, hums with the low growl of diesel generators and the nervous chatter of technicians. Two turntables sit side by side, each holding an identical acetate disc in a plain sleeve. A red telephone line runs straight to the palace. Chief Engineer Hiroshi Tanaka, hands still trembling from the palace recording, stands ready at the control board. Outside, a cordon of Kempeitai military police forms a human wall, rifles slung, but bayonets fixed. Across Tokyo, every radio in every home, factory and barracks is tuned to the same frequency. No music, no announcements, just the soft hiss of an open carrier wave. You can taste the metallic tension in the air, like the moment before a typhoon breaks. In the palace plaza, 2,000 meters away, a crowd has gathered without orders. Office girls in mompe trousers, soldiers in sweat-stained uniforms, mothers with infants strapped to their backs. They face the palace gates silent, waiting for the voice they have never heard. Overhead, a lone B-29 circles at 20,000 feet. The great artiste, instrumented for another drop, but held in reserve. Its presence is a silent threat. Listen or burn. 11:58 a.m. The studio clock ticks. Tanaka lifts the tone arm. The first disc spins up. A soft crackle, then the voice. High, reedy, unmistakably human. To our good and loyal subjects. In a rice paper house in Asakusa, an old man drops his tea bowl. In a Mitsubishi factory in Nagoya, 3,000 workers freeze at their benches. In a cave on Saipan, American codebreakers lean into headphones. In the palace, Hirohito sits alone before a small receiver, eyes closed. The war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage. A collective gasp ripples through the city. The phrase is courtly understatement, but the meaning is annihilation. In the plaza, a young lieutenant, Takeshi Mori, 24, sword at his side, listens with his platoon. His face is stone, but his hands clench the scabbard until the lacquer cracks. A new and most cruel bomb. At that moment in the NHK control room, the door bursts open. Major Kenji Hatanaka, leader of the palace coup attempt, storms in with 6 armed officers. Pistols gleam. "Stop the broadcast," he shouts. "This is treason." Tanaka lunges for the second turntable, backup disc already spinning. A technician throws himself across the board. The needle skips, but the voice continues, piped through a separate line to regional stations. In the plaza, Mori draws his sword. "The Emperor is coerced," he screams to his men. "We fight for honor." 100 rifles rise. Across the moat, Kempeitai open fire. The crack of Arisaka rifles splits the noon heat. Bullets whine off stone. A palace guard falls, blood blooming on white gloves. The crowd scatters, trampling fallen sandals and lunchboxes. Inside the studio, Hatanaka smashes the master disc with his pistol butt. Shards fly like ice, but the backup feeds live. Tanaka, bleeding from a scalp wound, keeps the fader up. The Emperor's voice rises above the gunfire. Endure the unendurable. At 12:02 p.m. the broadcast ends. Silence floods the airwaves. Then across Japan the reaction detonates. In the plaza, Mori charges the gate. A Kempeitai bullet takes him in the throat. He falls, sword clattering, blood pooling beneath the imperial chrysanthemum crest. His men waver, then lower rifles. The coup collapses in minutes. Hatanaka will shoot himself in the studio courtyard at 12:15. His body slumped over the shattered disc. In Hiroshima's ruins, survivors huddled around a salvaged radio weep openly. In Nagasaki, a priest translates for American POWs. It is over. In Manchuria, Kwantung Army remnants hear the broadcast on captured sets and lay down arms as Soviet tanks roll past. At 12:05 p.m., the B-29 banks away. Mission aborted. No third bomb today. Tokyo falls quiet. Radios click off. In the palace, Hirohito opens his eyes. The cedar box with Anami's haiku sits on the desk. He adds a single line in his own hand. The blade is sheathed. The nation lives. Outside, the plaza is littered with spent cartridges and broken sandals. A single cherry blossom, blown from a nearby tree, lands on Mori's blood. The war is over. The denial is dead. September 2nd, 1945. 8:55 a.m. Tokyo Bay lies flat and gunmetal grey under a low overcast, the water lapping gently against the barnacled hull of the USS Missouri on BB-63. The battleship's teak deck is scrubbed white, her 16-inch guns trained fore and aft in silent salute. A green baize table, borrowed from the officer's wardroom, stands amidships beneath the starboard 40mm mount. On it, 2 leather folders, 1 Japanese surrender instrument, 1 Allied copy, 2 fountain pens, 1 for MacArthur, 1 for Nimitz, a Union Jack, and a faded rising sun flag folded like funeral shrouds. A light rain hisses on the awnings. You can smell the diesel from the destroyers ringing the bay, the sharp tang of gun oil, and beneath it all the faint sweetness of chrysanthemums carried aboard by the Japanese delegation. 11 men in formal morning coats and top hats climb the accommodation ladder in single file, shoes polished to mirrors despite the rationing. Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu leads, his wooden leg clacking on the steel rungs, lost to a Korean assassin S-bomb in 1932. Behind him, General Yoshijiro Umezu in field khaki, face carved from granite, refuses a cane. His eyes fix on the deck as if it were enemy soil. Aboard, 200 correspondents cram the superstructure, flashbulbs popping like small arms fire. General Douglas MacArthur stands at the table in open-collar khakis, corncob pipe unlit. Beside him, Admiral Chester Nimitz, crisp whites gleaming. Behind them, a semicircle of Allied officers, Halsey Wainwright, emaciated from 3 years in Manchurian camps, Percival, Singapore's ghost. Overhead, a P-51 flies slow circles, its Merlin engine a low growl of reminder. The Japanese halt 3 paces from the table. Shigemitsu's prosthetic clicks once more as he bows. MacArthur does not return it. The only sound is the slap of ensigns and the distant clang of a bosun's pipe. MacArthur steps to the microphone. His voice, Missouri amplified, rolls across the water. We are gathered here, representatives of the major warring powers, to conclude a solemn agreement whereby peace may be restored. He does not mention Hiroshima. He does not need to. The Missouri. S forward turret is trained on what remains of Yokohama S waterfront, blackened ribs of warehouses visible even at 5 miles. Shigemitsu opens the Japanese folder with both hands, as if it weighs 1,000 tons. Umezu stands rigid, lips bloodless. MacArthur signs first, broad strokes with Wainwright's fountain pen. For the United States. Nimitz follows. Then the others, China, Britain, the Soviet Union, a late and sullen delegate, Australia, Canada, France, the Netherlands, New Zealand. 9 signatures, 9 pens. Shigemitsu steps forward. His wooden leg scrapes. He signs in a slow, deliberate hand, the characters Shigemitsu Mamoru trembling only at the final stroke. Umezu is last. MacArthur offers the pen. Umezu refuses it. I will not sign with an enemy's instrument. He produces his own, a cheap steel nib, and scrawls his name like a wound. The ink smears slightly. No one notices. MacArthur speaks again. Let us pray that peace be now restored to the world, and that God will preserve it always. These proceedings are closed. A bugler sounds, cease firing. Overhead 400 B-29s in perfect formation thunder across the bay, silver bellies catching the sun. The Japanese delegation does not look up. Shigemitsu bows again, deeper. Umezu salutes, crisp, mechanical, then turns on his heel. The wooden leg clacks down the ladder, each step an echo of Anami's tanto. On the quarterdeck, a marine band strikes the star-spangled banner. Across the water, the ruined skyline of Tokyo stands in mute witness. The war is over. The denial is buried at sea. September 3rd, 1945, 6:12 a.m., Hibiya Park, Tokyo. The first pale light of dawn creeps between the skeletal girders of the burned-out Daiichi building, where MacArthur's GHQ now flies the stars and stripes from a flagpole welded to melted steel. A lone streetcar clangs past, its bell cracked from the firestorm, carrying night shift nurses in Red Cross armbands. The air smells of wet ash and new lumber. American bulldozers have been clearing rubble since sunrise. Their diesel roar a daily reveille. You can taste the dust on every breath, the grit of pulverized Hiroshima and Nagasaki, carried east by the jet stream and settled into Tokyo's lungs. In the park, a small Shinto shrine, torii gate scorched but standing, has become an accidental memorial. Someone has left a child's wooden sandal on the offering stone. Beside it, a single sheet of rice paper flutters, pinned by a pebble. The ink is faded but legible. To the shadows on the stone, we endure. A woman in a patched mompe kneels there, Mrs. Setsuko Nakamura, 34, former schoolteacher, now a GHQ typist. She places a rice ball wrapped in nori and a tin cup of water. Her son's shadow was one of the hundreds etched into the Sumitomo Bank steps in Hiroshima. She comes every morning before work. Today, she is not alone. General Yoshijiro Umezu, released from Sugamo prison on parole for this anniversary, stands 10 paces back in civilian clothes. Grey suit too large, borrowed from a cousin. His sword is gone, surrendered on the Missouri. He watches Nakamura bow, then approaches. No words. He places a white chrysanthemum beside the sandal. Their eyes meet. She sees the man who signed the instrument. He sees the mother whose child he failed to protect. Both bow shallow equal. Then they part without speaking. Across the city, the collapse is quieter than bombs. August 6th, 1946, 8:15 a.m. Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park, former Nakajima Honmachi. 1 year to the minute. The hypocenter is marked now by a simple concrete arch designed by Kenzo Tange, still under construction. A crowd of 10,000 gathers, survivors in white, American journalists in seersucker, Soviet observers in ill-fitting suits. A bell tolls from the ruined industrial promotion hall, its dome skeleton a permanent scar. Mayor Shinzo Hamai, voice hoarse from radiation laryngitis, reads a declaration. We pledge no more Hiroshimas. Behind him, a child, Hiroko Nakamoto, 12, keloid scars lacing her arms, releases a paper crane into the Motoyasu River. It floats past the Aioi Bridge, now patched with American steel girders. The crowd is silent. No one claps. The war's end was not victory. It was survival. Epilogue in fragments. Toyoda's testimony, 1947, Tokyo trials. We believed spirit could defeat steel. The atomic bomb proved steel had learned to think. U.S. production totals, 1941, 1945, declassified 1952. 296,000 aircraft, 86,000 tanks, 12.8 million rifles, 2.4 million trucks, 104 aircraft carriers. Japan, 73,000 aircraft, 4,800 tanks, 1.6 million rifles, 12 carriers. Manhattan project cost, 2.2 billion in 1945 USD. Japan's total 1944 military budget, $1.5 billion. Anami's haiku, published 1955. Cherry blossoms fall. Steel cannot hold back the wind. I follow them down. The empire is gone. The Kokutai endures, stripped of divinity, cloaked in democracy. Children learn English from GIs handing out Hershey bars. Street vendors sell atomic bread, fluffy white loaves baked in American ovens. In the evenings, salarymen ride the Yamanote line past neon signs for Calpis and Asahi beer, the same tracks that once carried troop trains to Ujina port. At dusk, Mrs. Nakamura returns to the shrine in Hibiya. The chrysanthemum is still there. She adds a second rice ball. Somewhere, Umezu boards a train to his sister's farm in Yamanashi, sentenced to plant rice instead of command armies. The shadows on the stone do not fade, but the living walk past them now, heads unbowed. The day Japan realized it could not win was not August 6, 1945. It was every day after, when the truth settled into the bones of a nation and refused to leave.